too. But you should get this. Film the camera. Yeah, maybe step back. I've never really been interested in making lighting setup videos or gear review videos because I think there's just so much of that already out there, and you could just look up hundreds of the same video if you wanted to. But also, I'm just not that particularly focused on some of the more minute details of things. I mean, it depends. I mean, even just saying that, I think about how I was just watching an hour-long video about damage calculation in a video game the other day, and but for the creative process, there's certain things to focus on that matter more than others, and I think knowing why a thing works is more important than the what of how it works or the how. Like, you could find that information anywhere else, but if you have a good why for something, you'll always find that tweaking things and changing things to match your situation are more important than adhering to, any prescribed formula. But I had somebody ask me about one of my lighting setups the other day, and it helped me think of a way that I can share more of this stuff with you guys that might be helpful and makes me feel like I'm adding something that isn't entirely there. And so I'll kind of tell you the story of how that went and hopefully illustrate how I approach light in general, with the intent being that you can apply this to whatever lighting setup you use, because again, it's very easy to find a diagram for different lighting setups, but if you know what you're trying to accomplish and how to approach something, then you can use that knowledge for everything. So let's get into it. So my buddy calls me, he saw some pictures that I posted and was like, what setup did you use for this? I was explaining to him how I did it because he was saying, it looked very much like natural light, and my studio tragically does not have any natural light. And what I told him is that it was just bounced light, really. There was not much of a secret. And actually, it's funny because now I remember I also had somebody else ask me this, and I told them the same thing. I just bounced light, and he's like, really? Because I've tried that, and it hasn't worked like that for me. And I told him, obviously there's my editing, there's a lot of other things I was doing, and this shoot that I'm showing the BTS of here is one in which I tried that. And if you go on my Instagram and see some of the pictures for it, you can see the final outcome. But that response of which I had from both photographers who asked me, like, wow, I've never really seen bounce light work like that, illustrates the point, which is that the reason this setup has worked for me, and I've been using it recently, which basically is just bouncing a light in front of the model, bouncing one or two lights behind the model, depending on the look that I want, and then balancing how much power goes to each to get whatever variation of the effect I want. That really just came from a kind of two philosophies that I put together here. And I think these are two that you want to keep to whatever type of work you do. But specifically when you're thinking about lighting, to think of things this way. The first is that old saying, necessity is the mother of all creation. I think that's a paraphrase of how it goes, but essentially the idea is that when you need something, you will come up with a creative solution for it, right? Or just any solution for it. And so in my case, not having windows forced me to think of ways, how can I get this soft light that I want, that a lot of people want to see in their work, etc. Because I would see these people, doing like I used to do, pictures where in golden hour, and you see the industrial window frames casting interesting shadows on the wall, and everyone's amazed, and the pictures get a ton of engagement. I'm like, damn, like I just don't have that as an option, and I could be, and part of me was, a hater and think, well, the picture's not very good. It's just the window light. It's carrying everything for that photographer. But regardless, it was something I liked and wanted, but just in my situation, I don't have. And so as I started bouncing around light and playing around with it, I was able to shape something that I liked that captures at least a artificial version of that for me. So that's the first kind of mindset to have. Think of necessity being the mother of all creation, right? What is something that you need right now in your work? What is a limitation that you have that you need to overcome, and try different ways to overcome that limitation. See, now you're kind of into it. Now, the second perspective that helped me develop this lighting style was seeing someone on social media somewhere, I can't remember who, say something to the extent of like, all, light is light, it's all just light, something like that. And I remember when I saw that, like I was thinking about it, and it made a lot of sense, because I'm someone who can be, I love, spontaneity in the creative process, but never entirely spontaneous, right? Like I always like to have some kind of structure, or at least a list of things to try. So thinking that way, I used to also think very rigidly about lighting setups myself, where I would be like, how do people get this look and that look? And when I realized that not only does everyone's setup depend a lot of times on their equipment, on the space that they're in, but also when you think of light, it is all just light, right? So there's any number of ways of getting any type of look. This look that I have, like in a lot of ways, I was imitating a look that I've seen people do in huge studios with white cyc walls, and they'll have a huge scrim over the model, and they'll diffuse the light overhead, and then you get this look. Whereas I'm here trying to bounce it in my studio, because my studio, besides not having walls, I forgot to mention, is also pretty small. So when you realize that there's so many ways to skin a cat, as they say, and the light is just light, and you can manipulate it however you want, and no one's gonna know or care besides the final outcome, it kind of opens you up to approach things differently. And that was something that I felt very freeing when I was experimenting with this type of look for this shoot. I was thinking also about my style of photography and wanting to capture stories. And with this shoot here, I had a model who we planned a cool concept based on her wanting to pursue acting, and she was doing a sort of performance and getting into different personalities and expressions. And when I have people do that, sometimes I would find it very limiting that they couldn't move around the studio. So that was also combining that idea of necessity and limitations, and seeing light just as light. I was like, okay, if I wanted to move around, I need the light to not be static, and bouncing the light in my very unique studio space as well made it where I could let the model or the actress move around however they want, and I can capture it from many different angles. And so it really took this freeing up of like, okay, I need to get out of this mindset of setups, right? And instead of thinking of setups, just think of it as light that can be manipulated and shaped and moved. And this was also something that I learned a lot from working alongside some videographers and studying film in general. And you see in movies a lot where they'll use this motivated light, where they'll add lighting to a scene, but they're always trying to copy natural light or replace it by natural light. And they often will also shoot like on the shadow side of things, where a lot of times in photography you're having the face more evenly lit. And so when you look at movie sets, and there's even accounts on social media about this, where they're taping black material somewhere to add a little negative fill for something, or standing up lights in weird ways. Like they're always just moving everything around they possibly can around a set, and using all sorts of equipment to get the look they want. And it's never a prescribed thing. There's methods and approaches that they have to lighting, but they're always just innovating for the look that they want. And when you approach it that way, you'll start moving the light in ways that you might have not even expected. Because, there's a lot of people, and I've even bought some, that will sell you, guides for lighting setups. And they can be very useful. Like I said, especially starting, it is kind of one of those things of like, you have to learn the rules before you can break them. And I've been shooting now 7 years full time. And so I have learned a lot of the basics, and that's been a lot of my approach. But if I had taken this approach earlier on in my career and was less rigid about lighting setups and how I was approaching light, I think I would have gone here, maybe not sooner, but I might have gone in a different direction, and would have just enjoyed what I was doing a lot more, rather than just trying to copy setups. So when you are thinking of your lighting setups a final time, think of what do you need, what are your limitations that you're working with, what do you have to overcome, and then think of your light as just light. It's something you will manipulate and move around, Focus more on the way your subject looks. Is it communicating the effect you want to communicate? And if not, move the light, power it down, change your camera settings. Focus more on customizing what you're creating to your situation and your approach, rather than simply imitating and obsessing over pre-established setups. And obviously, the key to all of this working is it's developing your eye and looking at photography, looking at movies, looking at printed images, and editing a lot and shooting a lot, learning to see what you like and don't like. But at least if you can weave this into your practice, it'll really free you up to create more like an artist and less like a photographer, if that makes sense. Thank you for watching. Leave any questions or comments you have, please. I'd love to hear what you guys think about this, and I'll see you guys at the next one. See, it's kind of like that. So you're gonna just come like real close, lean in towards the lens. Maybe that's too close.
Too close.
Yeah.
It's because I see this.
Yeah, that's kind of cool in it. I like that. There you go. Crouch down a little more so you can see more hair. Yeah, there you go. Cool.
Meaning of life. Good morning. I didn't have coffee yet. I can't answer you. Imagine.